Hi, welcome to week 6 of writing contemporary fiction. Sorry this video is a little late. We won't have any workshops this week, but I am looking forward to reading your stories when they're posted on Wednesday and Thursday, and we'll resume with workshopping next week. I wanted to talk to you today about an issue that I brought up in one of the workshops, but I don't think I brought it up in the other, and it's also a comment that I made in some of the feedback. I thought it was worth expanding on a little bit. The comment that I made in the feedback was I suggested to a few writers that they make themselves more vulnerable on the page, and it occurred to me that that might be a strange way of talking. You might not quite know what I was talking about. And that way of approaching fiction goes hand in hand with Robert Olen Butler's in From Where You Dream, which I hope you've all read by now. If you haven't, please do read that. But I'll just expand it a little bit more, not because I think it's the only way to approach fiction. It's not. There's no one right way, which is one of the great things about fiction. But I do think it's a way that a lot of writers I admire pursue. It's consistent with my own approach, and it's an approach to writing fiction that's been useful for students of mine over the years. So what are we talking about when we're talking about making yourself vulnerable on the page, or looking for the emotional center of your work, or mining your emotions for fictional use? What does that mean? Because it might be a strange way to think about fiction. So I just want to contrast that way with another approach, which I think a lot of writers might have, and a lot of writers particularly who haven't really maybe investigated or interrogated their process at length. So when I'm talking about making yourself vulnerable on the page, I'm not talking about starting with an idea or having a great story to tell or having something to say. This is a different kind of approach to what it means to write a story. What I'm suggesting is that the first step to writing a story is to get into contact with some emotion in yourself, preferably an emotion that's unresolved, an emotion that's powerful, and that's mysterious. And I say getting into contact or coming into the presence of that emotion because I'm not talking about writing a story about it in the first instance. I'm just talking about letting it dwell near you as a kind of constant companion. And what I think happens next in that process is to give this emotion to a character in some way, to manipulate or process the emotion. Again, we're not talking about narrative just yet. We're just talking about the rawness of the emotion. And there's a great, I think, value in keeping it raw for as long as you possibly can. Because as soon as you transfer it into a narrative in your mind, as soon as you make it into an idea or you thematize it, it loses a lot of its power and energy for you as a writer. So what I'm talking about is coming into contact with some emotion that makes you vulnerable, something that you use. And I'll give you a quick example from my own writing. In my book, The Naturalist, one of the emotions that I was dealing with was emotions and fears around belonging. And so the theme of the book is not sort of what it means to belong, although it does come up thematically a bit. But what that gave me is a way to drive my emotional connection to that character. And I think that's an important sort of way to approach fiction. So if you haven't been approaching it this way, if you've been approaching it in terms of writing a story or thinking of a theme or idea you'd like to get across, maybe you'll continue to. But I'd like to encourage you to reapproach fiction, to think of it as a different kind of thing, as an encounter with an emotion that you're mining or manipulating in a way that happens to be fictional. So we could talk a little bit more about that on the discussion forums and when we workshop again. See you online next week.